Hello everyone and welcome to my Y&R CBS Spoiler Today channel. Please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Today's episode is an absolute emotional roller coaster and I honestly don't know how we are supposed to keep it together after everything that just went down. We are diving deep into a series of events that are going to change the canvas of Genoa City forever. First, we have the heart-wrenching situation with Lily Winters. She's been standing by her father, Malcolm, with so much strength, but today that strength is put to the ultimate test when she receives news that feels like a physical blow. Then there's the power struggle happening over at the athletic club between Phyllis Summers and Kane Ashby. Phyllis thinks she can buy loyalty, but Kane is proving that some bridges are burned too badly to ever be rebuilt. But the real headline, the thing that's going to have everyone talking at the water cooler tomorrow, is the massive secret that Dr. Stephanie Simmons has been hiding for decades. We are talking about a secret that involves a biological son, a life built on a lie, and the medical crisis that forces the truth into the light. It's a story of sacrifice, regret, and the sudden expansion of a family tree that nobody saw coming. We are seeing Lily face a devastating reality, Malcolm discovering a piece of himself he never existed, and Holden realizing his entire life was a carefully constructed narrative. There is so much to unpack, from the business betrayals to the blood connections. So stay tuned as we break down every single heartbreaking and shocking moment from this incredible episode. The atmosphere at the athletic club was heavy, with a mix of hope and hushed anxiety as Lily Winters sat down with her father, Malcolm. You could see the tension in her shoulders, that weight we all carry when someone we love is hurting, and there is only so much we can do. They were there to talk about the plan for Malcolm's health, specifically the next step for his treatment, and the possibility of Lily being a donor match. Lily, being the devoted daughter she is, agreed to keep the news of Malcolm's condition under wraps until they had a definitive answer about whether she could help him. Malcolm, looking at her with so much love and a hint of fear, made her promise something incredibly difficult. He told her she must not blame herself if it turns out she isn't a match. I can't believe she managed to keep a straight face during that. Imagine how he felt, trying to protect his daughter's heart even while his own life was hanging in the balance. They talked about the medical team waiting for him in New York, and Malcolm dropped the name of Dr. Stephanie Simmons. He mentioned her as someone he knew years ago, a figure from his past who was now part of his future. Little did he know how much that name was about to mean to his entire world. While that emotional drama was unfolding, a different kind of war was being waged across the club. Phyllis Summers, never one to let a crisis or an opportunity to go to waste, approached Kane Ashby with a proposition that only Phyllis could dream up. She offered him the funding to create a brand new AI program and even suggested he could head up her entire AI division at Summers' conglomerate. On the surface, it sounds like a dream job, right? But Kane isn't a fool. He saw right through the friendship Phyllis was trying to sell. He realized that if he developed this technology under her roof, it would belong to her, meaning he could never use it to establish his own power or, more importantly, use it against her. Kane didn't just say no, he completely shut her down. He told her straight to her face that any friendship she offered felt like a trap. I loved that he's standing his ground, but man, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Kane ended the conversation with a taunt that probably kept Phyllis up all night. He told her he might just create that AI program on his own, unleash it to tear her company apart, and then hand Newman Enterprises back to Victor Newman just to watch her squirm. Can you imagine the look on her face? It was a cold-blooded move, and it shows just how much animosity is still simmering between these two. Later on, the drama shifted back to Lily as she sat alone at her table, looking visibly shaken. Kane actually stopped by. In a rare moment of genuine concern, he hoped they could put their many conflicts on hold because he could see how troubled she was. He pushed her to open up, wondering if her distress was about Malcolm. For a second, I really thought she might lean on him. She acknowledged that she desperately needed someone to talk to. But then she dropped that hammer. She looked him in the eye and told him that the person she needed to talk to definitely wasn't him. Ouch! That had to sting. Kane took the hint and left, leaving Lily alone with her thoughts and the phone call that would change everything. Meanwhile, over at Crimson Lights, the real bombshell was being prepared. Stephanie Simmons was sitting with Holden Novak, and the air was thick with the kind of secrets that break families apart. Stephanie finally admitted to Holden that the man he grew up calling dad, Dr. Jerry Novak, was not his biological father. Can you imagine the shock to spend your whole life believing you know who you are, only to have the foundation pull out from under you? Stephanie explained that she met Jerry while she was already pregnant with another man's child. Jerry, being the man he was, agreed to raise Holden as his own. They had plans, big plans to build a life and a family. But those dreams were cut short when Jerry died of a heart attack. When Holden was still just a boy, Holden naturally assumed his biological father was also dead. But Stephanie dropped the second bomb. He's still alive. She told him that his bio dad is a good man who actually needs Holden's help right now. When Malcolm finally arrived at the coffee house, the tension reached a boiling point. Stephanie managed to get Holden to wait on the patio for a few minutes so she could speak to Malcolm privately. She had to deliver a devastating blow. She had realized that Lily wasn't a viable donor. Because of Lily's previous battles with cancer and the intense chemo and radiation treatments she went through, her body simply couldn't provide what Malcolm needed. It's so incredibly unfair, but Stephanie wasn't done. Before she could explain further, Holden walked back in, and the truth came out in a way Stephanie never intended. She looked at Malcolm and told him the truth. Holden is his son. The silence in that room must have been deafening. Stephanie explained that she had left town and realized she was pregnant. But since Malcolm had already moved on with someone else, she didn't want to disrupt his life. She found Jerry, they fell in love, and they decided to raise Holden together. Malcolm was reeling. He asked why she didn't reach out after Jerry died, and her excuses were so human. She delayed, she doubted, and then she heard a rumor that Malcolm had died. By the time she found out he was alive, she had already processed the loss of the relationship he could have had with Holden. Both Malcolm and Holden were understandably furious with her for the years of lies. Stephanie, trying to focus on the crisis at hand, pointing out that they would have plenty of time to be angry later. But right now, Malcolm needed a doctor. Holden eventually realized that he could be the match Malcolm needed. He scoffed, calling himself a genetic jackpot in a tone that was so full of heart and sarcasm. But then, the hits just kept coming. He found out he has a half-sister, Lily, whom he never knew existed. The look on his face was one of pure sensory overloaded. Malcolm knew he had to be the one to tell Lily that she couldn't help him after all. But he also had to process the fact that he was asking a stranger who happened to be his son to save his life. Back at the athletic club, Lily didn't wait for Malcolm. She called her own doctor to get the results of preliminary checks. The scene was heartbreaking. She sat there frozen as the doctor confirmed her worst fears. She sat there in the middle of all that luxury, feeling completely and utterly powerless. She made a promise Malcolm she wouldn't feel guilty. But how can you not feel the weight of the world when you find out your own survival has come at such high cost? Lily Winter sat frozen at her table in the athletic club, her phone still trembling slightly in her hands as the doctor's words echoed through her mind with a cruel, final clarity. She was not a match. And worse, she could never be won. Not after everything her body and had already endured. The treatments that had once saved her life had now taken something else away. Across the room, the low hum of conversations and clinking glasses carried on as if nothing had changed, as if her world hadn't just shifted in the most devastating way possible. Only hours earlier, she had sat with Malcolm, holding on to cautious hope, promising him and herself that whatever happened, she wouldn't drown in guilt. But promises made in the safety of uncertainty were far easier than facing the harsh reality now staring her down. Malcolm had tried to prepare her, gently urging her not to blame herself if things didn't work out. But neither of them had truly believed it would come to this. Meanwhile, Malcolm himself was preparing for a journey to New York, clinging to the possibility that his medical team there might be another option, another miracle, another chance. The mention of Dr. Stephanie Simmons had stirred something distant and unresolved in his memory, a reminder that his past was never quite as settled as he would once thought. Elsewhere, Ken Ashby found himself entangled in a very different kind of battle, one that had nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with power, pride, and revenge. Phyllis Summer stood before him with her signature confidence, laying out an offer that on the surface seemed impossible to refuse. Funding, resources, and control over a cutting-edge AI division that could redefine his future. But Kane saw through it immediately. To him, it was an opportunity. It was a cage, one disguised as salvation. Accepting her offer would mean trying his ambitions to her empire, surrendering the very independence he valued most. Phyllis pressed harder, her tone shifting from persuasive to cutting as she reminded him of everything he had lost, painting herself as his only viable path forward. But Kane refused to bend, his distrust of her motives running too deep. He dismissed her proposition with cold certainty, even going so far as to taunt her with the idea of building something greater on his own, something powerful enough to dismantle her company and hand victory back to Victor Newman. Is to watch her unravel. It was a cruel image, on one he delivered with a sharp edge that left Phyllis momentarily speechless, though far from defeated. Back at the club, Kane's path crossed with Lily's, and for a brief moment the tension between them softened. He noticed the distress she couldn't quite hide, and despite everything, he offered a fragile olive branch, suggesting they put their differences aside, at least temporarily. When he gently pressed her about Malcolm, sensing the weight she was carrying, Lily almost gave in. For a split second, it seemed like she might open up, might let someone share the burden crushing her chest. But then reality reasserted itself, and she pulled back, reminding him, and perhaps herself, that he was not the person she could lean on anymore. Kin accepted the rejection with a quiet resignation, leaving her alone with her grief. Across town at Crimson Lights, another storm was brewing. One rooted in secrets buried for decades. Stephanie Simmons faced her son, Holden Novak, with a truth she could no longer contain. The man Holden had believed to be his father, Dr. Jerry Novak, had loved him, raised him, and given him a life. But he was not his biological parent. Stephanie explained how she had been pregnant before she met Jerry, how he had stepped in without hesitation, offering to build a family with her despite the circumstances. For years, the story had been enough a carefully constructed reality that shielded Holden from a more complicated truth. But now, with time running out and lives hanging in the balance, that this man was alive and that he needed Holden's help, the tension escalated when Malcolm arrived. Unaware of the life-altering revelation awaiting him, Stephanie orchestrated a brief today, sending Holden outside as she prepared to deliver the truth to Malcolm. But before she could fully unravel the past, she dropped another devastating piece of news. Lily was not a viable donor. The hope Malcolm had quietly nurtured began to crumble. Holden re-entered and forced the truth into the open. In that moment, decades of secrecy shattered as Stephanie revealed that Holden was Malcolm's son. The confession landed like a shockwave, leaving both men reeling. Malcolm struggled to reconcile the idea that he had a son he never knew, a life he had missed entirely because of decisions made long ago. Stephanie explained her reasoning, her voice tinged with regret as she described her leaving town, discovering her pregnancy, and chose silence rather than disrupting Malcolm's life. Especially after he had already moved romantically, she had found love with Jerry, built a life, family, and convinced herself it was the right choice. Even after Jerry's death, fear and uncertainty had kept her from reaching out. She had believed Malcolm was dead at one point, and by the time she learned the truth, the weight of the years has lost had become too heavy to confront. Now faced with consequences of those choices, all three of them were left to navigate the fallout. Holden and Malcolm shared a rare moment of unity in their frustration, with Stephanie both grappling with the enormity of what had been taken from them. But there was no time to dwell solely on anger. The reality of Malcolm's condition loomed over everything, forcing them to focus on what came next. As the conversation shifted, the implications of Holden's existence became clear. He wasn't just Malcolm's son. He might also be his best chance at survival. The possibility that Holden could be donor introduced a new layer of complexity, one that Holden met with a mixture of sarcasm and disbelief, referring to himself as a genetic jackpot in a tone that barely masked his discomfort. The revelation that he also had a half-sister, Lily, added yet another dimension to the situation, leaving him overwhelmed by the sudden expansion of his family and the responsibilities that came with a Malcolm, aware of the immense burden being placed on it herself. And just beyond that, another truth waited to be revealed: the existence of a brother she never knew, a connection that might change everything for both of them. In that fragile space between loss and revelation, Lily's world hung in the balance, shaped by choices made long before she ever had a say, and by the uncertain hope that somehow a new path forward might still emerge from the wreckage. The impact of these revelations is going to ripple through Genoa City for months, if not years. When we look at the consequences of Stephanie's silence, it's not just about a missing father-son bond. It's about a medical lifeline that was almost severed by a secret. The irony here is just staggering. Lily, who would give anything to save Malcolm, is physically unable to do so because of the very treatments that kept her alive to be by his side. It's a tragic, circular bit of fate that feels incredibly heavy. On the other hand, we have Holden, who has gone from being an ordinary guy to being the genetic jackpot. For a man he's only just met, the psychological consequences for Holden are going to be massive. How do you process that the man you thought was your father was a lie, and your real father is a legendary figure in a city you are just getting to know? And then we have the business fallout. Kane's rejection of Phyllis isn't just a personal snub, it's a declaration of war by threatening to take this AI talents to Newman Enterprises. He's positioned himself as a major player in the corporate power struggles. If he actually succeeds in giving Victor Newman an edge against Phyllis, it could shift the entire balance of power in giving Victor Newman an edge against Phyllis. It could shift the entire balance of power in generosity. Phyllis, for all her bravado, might have just created her own worst enemy by trying to manipulate a man who has nothing left to lose. The convergence of these two storylines, the deeply personal family crisis and the high-stakes corporate maneuvering, is setting the stage for a massive collision. Lily is going to find out about Holden soon, and that meeting is going to be explosive. Will she feel replaced? Will she feel relieved? The consequences of Stephanie's choices are only just beginning to be felt, and the fallout is going to be as dramatic as it is unpredictable. We are seeing a complete reshaping of the Winters family tree, and the aftershock are going to be felt by everyone they touch. Lily's breath hitched as she tried to steady herself, but the weight of everything pressing down on her refused to ease, each thought colliding with the next in a relentless storm of guilt, grief, and disbelief. She had always prided herself on being strong, on finding a way to stand tall no matter that life threw at her. Yet this felt different. This wasn't something she could fight, fix, or outmaneuver. And this is where the story quietly changes direction. Because sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we can win, but the ones we have to accept. Lily isn't just losing the chances to save her father, she's being forced to face a truth no one prepares you for. That love doesn't always equal control. And that realization cuts deeper than anything else. What makes this even more powerful is the cruel irony. The very strength that once saved Lily's life is now the reason she can't save Malcolm. And the kind of emotional twist doesn't just hurt, it transforms her. In my opinion, this is the moment Lily begins to evolve into someone even stronger, but also more guarded, because when hope slips through your fingers like this, you don't forget it. And then there's Holden, stepping into a role he never asked for, carrying a legacy he didn't even know existed, and suddenly becoming the key to everything, which raises a question that feels impossible to ignore. Will Holden step up and risk everything for a father he just met? Or will the weight of betrayal push him away at the worst possible moment? And what happens when Lily discovers that the one person who can save Malcolm is also the brother she never knew she had? Will that bond heal them or break them even more? Looking ahead, it feels like we are heading toward a deeply emotional collision, where family, truth, and sacrifice all meet. And not everyone will walk away the same. Because if Holden says yes, it could save Malcolm, but it might also reopen wounds that never had the chance to heal. And if he says no, the consequences could be devastating in ways no one is ready for. So the real question isn't just who survives, it's who changes forever after this. And as this story keeps unfolding, keep watching closely, because the next choice someone makes, the story keeps unfolding. Keep watching closely, because the next choice someone makes might be the one that changes everything. What do you guys think? Should Holden help Malcolm after being lied to for so long? And how is Lily going to react when she finds out she has a brother? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more Young and the Restless updates. Thanks for